Kind of interesting that this article conveniently drops on the day that Unrivaled starts its season on True TV at 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. And let's be real, school went back in today across the country, pretty much. At least most of the schools I know here in Texas. It wasn't like people were still on Christmas break or are still on Christmas break. They just started the season. By the way, started the season on the NFL's Black Monday, where now 6 head coaches no longer have jobs and has completely taken over the sports news cycle. Sucked all the wind out of it. And trust me, I did a video the other day. There wasn't even...
Monday, January 6th, 2025. While 6 NFL head coaches were being shown the door on Black Monday, another professional sports league was quietly stepping onto the court for what could be its final stand. Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 women's basketball experiment fueled by millions in venture capital, tipped off its second season on True TV at noon on a Monday. When kids were back in school, offices were back to work, and the NFL was swallowing the entire sports media oxygen supply. And buried beneath that noise came a stunning admission. The league's own president effectively conceded they might need the WNBA to survive. This isn't rumor or internet spin. Front Office Sports reported that Unrivaled president Alex Bazelle went on record saying that nothing is off the table when it comes to partnering with the WNBA. And in the language of sports business, that isn't optimism. That's desperation wrapped in polished corporate phrasing.
At all. And you didn't start this on TNT. I just can't imagine. I mean, why wouldn't you, if you have to, just do prime time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? By the way, they're going up against WWE tonight. 1-year anniversary of Raw on Netflix. It's going to be a huge show. That's who you're going up against? Along with...
And here's what makes that timing so brutally unforgiving. Unrivaled isn't going up against college basketball or some low-stakes WNBA preseason window. They're launching straight into the teeth of WWE's 1-year anniversary of Raw on Netflix, a massive, heavily promoted cultural event that's been building momentum for weeks. At the same time, they're getting completely buried under an avalanche of NFL coaching firings that will dominate every sports show, podcast, and headline for days. And then there's the move that quietly reveals just how dire things really are. They didn't announce a major expansion, didn't talk about selling out bigger arenas or scaling up demand. They proudly increased arena capacity by 150 seats. Not 1,500, not 15,000, 150 people. When a professional sports league is celebrating the addition of 150 seats, that's not growth, that's triage. That's an organization trying to spin survival tactics into momentum while hoping no one notices the panic underneath.
NBA's help to stay afloat. That's on the table. They're in big trouble, folks. Year 2 tipped off Monday with 2 matinee games following an evening slate. It comes with a clear challenge, solidifying the startup 3-on-3 in an increasingly crowded women's basketball landscape.
Here's how they ended up here, and this is the part people forget. Unrivaled didn't launch as some fringe experiment. It came out with real momentum and serious money behind it. A Series B round valued the league at a staggering $340 million, instantly signaling legitimacy. They attracted actual WNBA talent, not fringe names, and branded themselves as the elite off-season destination for women's basketball. The pitch was clean and compelling. 3-on-3 basketball in Miami, 6 figures for roughly 2 months of work, and a way to stay sharp during the WNBA offseason. On paper, it made perfect sense. And early on, it worked. Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart, 2 of the most respected stars in the game, co-founded the league, lending it instant credibility. They brought star power, media buzz, and the feeling that this was something different, something sustainable. For a moment, it looked like Unrivaled wasn't just supplementing the ecosystem, it was redefining it. And now, after all that promise, the question quietly hanging in the air isn't about growth anymore. It's about survival, and whether what they're calling partnership is really just a lifeline they never expected to need.
Partnering with the WNBA its best bet? Question mark. Quote, I don't want to speak too much of what's going on behind the scenes, but I've made it very clear we're open to the ecosystem. I'm sure you are. Unrivaled President Alex Bazelle said Monday, on the day the league's open, quote, which way that looks like, for us, there's nothing that's on the table or off the table. Nothing that's off the table is the key takeaway there. Brazil has been open about Unrivaled's efforts to work with the WNBA from the onset. In September, he told Front Office Sports that Unrivaled went to the WNBA early and was open to a formal partnership. The WNBA...
Except there was a problem, and it showed up immediately. The players don't actually want a modified version of the sport. They want 5-on-5 basketball, the real game, the one that defines careers and legacies. And the biggest star in women's basketball made that reality impossible to ignore without ever mentioning Unrivaled by name. Caitlyn Clark, the player who single-handedly pushed WNBA ratings to historic levels in 2024, chose not to participate. This wasn't a quiet scheduling conflict or a vague non-commitment. She was clear that her style, her rhythm, and her game don't translate to 3-on-3 basketball. That decision landed like a warning shot. When a league's entire business model relies on star power to drive attention, and the biggest star in the sport opts out, you're not dealing with a branding issue or bad timing. You're facing a core structural problem with the product itself, one that no amount of marketing spin can fix.
It's because of Project B, which is going to have this league in a damn bind. I mean, real fast. Quote, what you look at right now is there's a collaboration that's going on in NBA Europe. That was not a formal partnership before. As long as you can look at that space in an innovative lens, anything is doable, anything is possible. He's literally bringing up other examples of collaboration. By this time next year, Project B, the new traveling 5-on-5 league, plans to be up and running with a number of former and current Unrivaled players committed to play in the inaugural season, including Alyssa Thomas and Jewel Lloyd. Beyond that immediate threat, there's a longer-term one if the WNBA pursues exclusivity as a result of increased pay. Quote,
and it gets worse because Caitlyn Clark isn't the only star who said no. Aya Wilson, the two-time MVP and the undisputed face of the Las Vegas Aces, isn't playing in Unrivaled. Neither is Angel Reese, whose rivalry with Clark fueled engagement all season. Sabrina Ionescu, one of the most recognizable and marketable players in the WNBA, passed as well. That means Unrivaled launched its second season without the 5 most visible faces in women's basketball. Let that sink in. This is a league that reportedly generated around $27 million in revenue in its inaugural season, which sounds impressive until you stack it against a $340 million valuation. That kind of revenue-to-valuation math only works if explosive growth is coming. But where does that growth come from when the biggest stars, the very players who move ratings, sell tickets, and dominate headlines, are choosing to stay away? How do you sell momentum when your potential anchors are opting out, especially with another league looming that hasn't even officially launched yet?
It's probably not coming in this CBA, but it does look like it's coming. That may be true, but there's a belief within WNBA circles that the league is still at least one collective bargaining agreement away from being able to offer salaries that warrant exclusivity. But for sustained success, Unrivaled needs to consider an increasingly crowded women's basketball ecosystem. Now, it goes on to talk about the great, and I do mean the GOAT, David Stern, coming out and talking about why the WNBA was created. It was created as a league opposite to the NBA, purposely, so people would have basketball to watch when the NBA wasn't playing. It goes on to talk about the fact that the Unrivaled's got all this new money? Well, it's just investment money. All right, Series B investment valuing the league at $340 million. Following the inaugural season when the league banked more than $27 million in revenue, the league is trying to grow that number, selling more tickets in a small arena, increasing the capacity.
And that's the real reason Unrivaled's leadership is suddenly looking toward the WNBA for help, because a much bigger threat is already forming in the background. Project B, a new 5-on-5 traveling league, is scheduled to launch around this time next year, and it's already pulling gravity away from Unrivaled. Commitments have reportedly been secured from current Unrivaled players, including Alyssa Thomas and Jewel Lloyd, not fringe names, but legitimate stars who are playing this second Unrivaled season while openly aligning themselves with a league that doesn't even exist yet. That's not healthy competition, that's an exodus unfolding in real time. When your own players are publicly choosing a future elsewhere, you're no longer battling for market share, you're fighting for survival. And Project B has one advantage that cuts straight to the core of the issue. It's offering the game players actually want to play. 5-on-5. Full court. Real basketball. Not a modified version built to fit a smaller arena, a shorter window, and a television compromise. That difference isn't cosmetic, it's existential, and Unrivaled's leadership knows it.
And there were, even in this little arena, there were empty seats. Very visible on the television screen. This league is in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. Breanna Stewart, co-founder, when talking about Project B, honestly, I don't know. Talking about, are they considered a competitor? Project B has a lot that's still in the works until they're on the ground running. No, that's no shade to them or anything. It's just different. We're playing 3-on-3 in one city. It's 5-on-5 all over the place. Yeah, but when you...
Now let's slow this down and really examine what Alex Bazelle actually said, because the wording is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. He told Front Office Sports, "I don't want to speak too much about what's going on behind the scenes, but I've made it very clear we're open to the ecosystem, which way that looks for us. Nothing is on the table or off the table." Read that again. Nothing is off the table. That's not confidence. That's not vision. That's not a league dictating terms from a position of strength. That's the language of an organization running out of options and signaling to anyone listening that they're willing to grab onto whatever keeps them afloat. And the subtext gets even louder when he reaches for an example. He points to NBA Europe, a project born out of collaboration, slow build-up, and necessity rather than dominance. He's not talking about expansion from power, he's talking about survival through alignment. When a league president starts referencing how other organizations avoided collapse as a template, that's not strategic curiosity, that's an admission that the ground is shifting under their feet.
And I'm sure there may, I guess, maybe there's going to be some basketball fans that are going to all come together to try to flood those two matinees. But I'm guessing the ratings for those two games are going to be sub 100,000 viewers. Is that a success? And I'm talking sub 100,000, maybe with the new methodology that's artificially pumping all these numbers up. This was code word, like business code word for Adam Silver. You got your ears on? We're in the quicksand and we're tossing you. I got a little rope here, or could you toss us a rope? Toss us a rope. We're going down. It is what it is. I mean, I think Project B is going to stomp this league right out of existence. And then we'll see. You know, you got to realize the NBA's working with NBA Europe. Okay, well, I mean, Project B is an overseas league, and there's a lot of reputable people involved in that league. You know? Again, Unrivaled, no Sophie, no Asia, no Sabrina, no Caitlyn, and no Angel. And if you gave that league truth serum, I bet you they would have told you 6 months ago, well, we'll have Sabrina Ionescu and Angel Reese. No, you won't.
Here's what makes this moment especially fascinating from a pure business standpoint. Unrivaled actually approached the WNBA early in its development and pitched a partnership, and the league said no. At the time, that decision made perfect sense. Why would the WNBA help legitimize a 3-on-3 league that could siphon player time, energy, and attention during the offseason? That was a rational, protective move. But the landscape has shifted dramatically since then. The WNBA is now heading into negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement. And for the first time, there's serious internal discussion about exclusivity clauses that would restrict players from competing in outside leagues during the offseason. According to sources around the league, that kind of language doesn't exist in the current CBA, and the WNBA is still at least one agreement away from paying salaries high enough to justify exclusivity. But the direction is obvious. The league is moving there, and that's exactly why Unrivaled is suddenly stuck in an impossible position, caught between a league that once rejected them and a future where their entire business model could be legislated out of existence. They can't compete with Project B on the actual product, because 5-on-5 basketball will always matter more to players than a 3-on-3 experiment. They can't lock in the biggest stars either, because those players are either protecting their bodies in the off-season or waiting to see which league truly offers the best long-term opportunity. And looming over everything is the very real possibility that the WNBA eventually implements exclusivity rules that effectively outlaw off-season leagues through player contracts. That leaves only one realistic path forward: becoming part of the WNBA ecosystem, not as a rival or disruptor, but as a feeder, a developmental arm, or a formally sanctioned off-season option. That's what "nothing is off the table" actually means. It means survival at any cost. And the warning signs are already flashing. That Monday afternoon opener played in an arena with visible empty seats, in a building that barely holds 1,000 people. They couldn't even sell out the opener. Social media buzz was muted. The energy from year one was gone. Front Office Sports led their article with a sentence that should terrify investors. The novelty of Unrivaled's inaugural season is gone. And for a league entering only its second year, that's catastrophic. Novelty was supposed to carry them while real fandom developed. Instead, they launched at noon on a Monday, buried under NFL Black Monday and WWE's Netflix anniversary. A move that feels less like strategy and more like quietly fulfilling broadcast obligations and hoping the ratings don't draw attention. Look at the pattern. They branded themselves as the premier off-season destination but chose a format the biggest stars don't want to play. They raised money on aggressive growth projections, then watched players commit to a league that doesn't even exist yet. They built a small Miami venue for atmosphere, then couldn't fill it. They picked the worst possible spot on the sports calendar to relaunch. This isn't bad luck. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of the market. Players want real basketball. Fans want the stars they already follow. Unrivaled has neither the format nor the star power to sustain momentum. So now the endgame comes into focus. Alex Bazelle's comments hint at quiet, active conversations about folding into the WNBA's infrastructure. Maybe that looks like a women's G League. Maybe it's a sanctioned off-season circuit with controlled rules. Maybe the WNBA simply acquires Unrivaled outright and repurposes it. Whatever the outcome, the choices that led here are coming due. And the next few months will tell us whether Unrivaled adapts or disappears. Watch what happens next because the signals are getting louder. Watch whether the WNBA even entertains Unrivaled's quiet outreach. Watch whether Project B actually launches with the star power Unrivaled couldn't lock down. Watch whether Unrivaled even survives long enough to see a third season. And if it does, whether it's still clinging to 3-on-3 or quietly abandoning the very format that was supposed to define it. Because right now, with empty seats visible in a venue that's already tiny, with the biggest names in women's basketball choosing other paths, with a 5-on-5 league looming on the horizon, and with its own president openly admitting that nothing is off the table, Unrivaled isn't signaling confidence, it's signaling desperation. And in professional sports, once that scent is out there, it doesn't take long for predators to notice. So what happens next? Does the WNBA step in and absorb Unrivaled into the official ecosystem? Does Project B launch and completely wipe out Unrivaled's business model before it can adjust? Or does Unrivaled somehow defy the odds and survive as an independent league despite losing the star power battle and the format war at the same time? Drop your predictions in the comments, and if you want to track how this unfolds, hit subscribe, because this story is nowhere near finished.